You know, if you understand the power of shame, I was one time when I was living in Nigeria, I was asked to teach in a church, an Aqua church, and there was a young pastor, a great friend of mine, and so he got a group of the youth together and one of the elders as well. And so we had in a week this plumbline teaching for 3 days, for 3 nights. And just to imagine the elder of the church that was joining as well, on that last night, the third night, was ministry. And he confessed how he was struggling and had been falling so much in alcohol addiction. And he had been so ashamed and so afraid to share about his problem that he had already made up his mind that he was just going to quietly leave, even leave the whole city, to leave, just get away, so that nobody would ever see him again. Because that was for him, that seemed more easy than to have to face the shame, you know, because you know how they do in many churches, you know, and especially when you're an elder, they will put you through the whole shame protocol and put you on the back bench and like punish you till the core, as if Jesus never said it is finished. As if John is in 1 John 2, it never says that Jesus died not for our sin only, but for the sin of the whole entire world. Well, somehow they have taken that out of their Bibles. And they put people through a tremendous shame and punishment, you know, when they struggle with things and have fallen into things. And so this man had just decided to just disappear from the city so that he didn't need to face that shame. But when I was teaching this plumbline teaching, the Holy Spirit convicted him. And I'm already, together with the pastor, that also said, like, look, whatever anyone confesses, there will be no such thing as church discipline. There will be no such thing as punishment, because Jesus has paid for everything. And it's just for us to walk in the light. And so I also had explained properly, you know, the whole issue of church discipline. You know, in the church you are part of, how do they handle church discipline? When do they use that?
Yeah, yes, it's of the. I think what you're asking is the reason for church discipline.
Yeah. Have you ever checked the Bible, what it says about church discipline?
I'm not sure. I'm not so sure about that
Okay.
one. I'm not so
Yeah.
sure.
Well, you see, Paul writes that if you see a brother who is in sin, you go to your brother or your sister and you speak with her
Okay, okay.
or with him. And if he hears you, you have gained your brother or sister.
Oh, yeah.
But if he or she does not hear, you take 2 or 3 others with you. And of course, you take
Yeah,
people with you that you know that person is respecting. Not the ones that you don't take big bullies with you. No, you take people with you that person respects. And if they then hear the 2 or 3 witnesses, then you have gained your brother or your sister. If he still doesn't hear, you go to the elders of the
listen
church.
more verse.
Now the elders of the church will tell the person, and you know, like, hey, this is not right, this is not biblical, this is wrong. And it says, if he does not hear the elders, then he will be to you as an unbeliever. Now, how do
Yeah, yeah.
you treat an unbeliever? When an unbeliever comes to your church, do you put the unbeliever on the back bench?
No.
No. You welcome him. He's not part of the church. He's not considered as part of the body of Christ. But you reach out to that person and share the gospel. Do you understand? So church discipline is not a punishment. It is a status of reality that if you say, I am a follower of Christ, but your life shows consistently that you are not following Christ, and you continually claim that I can involve myself in this sin and I am still following Christ, well, I'm sinning because that is okay with Christ, where it is against scripture, then the Bible says, well, sorry, then you have to tell this person the truth. You are not part of the body of Christ. So church discipline is not as much a punishment, it is just a statement of reality. But often it's used as punishment, as if Jesus did not carry all the punishment of our sin on the cross. As if Jesus paid only 90% and 10% you have to carry yourself. So we have to punish you for that 10%. You know, it's basically a mockery of Jesus. So on that day with this elder, he just broke and he confessed everything. He even confessed how he had already prepared and was planning to leave. It was basically when the pastor the Sunday before, when I was preaching in that church, had announced that we were going to have that seminar, that he said, well, okay, let me just go there. That's my last hope. And you know, the glory of the Lord came, and this man was set free. And like you know, he now walked in the light, and now by keeping himself accountable, he could break with his alcohol addiction without being ashamed. So often there is already an original shame behind it, and then there is an extra shame coming on top because of the addiction. Okay. I think there are some people talking in the room there. Can you ask them to be a little bit more quiet?
Uncle P, you said your voice is.
Okay. So yesterday,
Okay, sir.
yeah, yesterday, you know, I was sharing, you know, when it comes to shame, ultimately it is a rejection of yourself. So it's not even that, it can be a rejection of other people as well, but ultimately it is a rejecting yourself. You see, something about shame and also about anger. If a stranger that passes by on the road that you have never seen before comes to you and says all kind of nasty things to you, how serious do you take that?
You bluff it off.
Yeah, you think like, well, okay, that man is, I don't know, something must be wrong. You know, so surely has a brain problem. But if your brother comes to you and says exactly the same thing, what does it do to you?
Yeah. You feel hot, you feel heat.
Yes, so the closer somebody is to you, the more you feel it, okay? But, you know, this is something that I cannot go into all depth this week, but you see, if you do something wrong and people have huge problem far above and beyond your wrongdoing with that and are angry beyond what you did, and maybe you remain angry even if you have said sorry and try to correct your life, or you know, whose problem is that?
Yeah, I guess that's their problem.
That is their problem, yes. But often we will feel that it's our problem and we have to make everything right. We have to resolve all their problems now because you did something wrong. You understand? Now, with the Lord, it's not like that. But with people, it's very often like that. And out of that comes a lot of shame and a lot of fear, and ultimately resulting to a lot of loneliness. Okay, so that's why you see all these roots that lead to addiction. You know, the fear is, I know it's just a quick recap from yesterday, you know, the loneliness and the fear of sickness, loneliness. Okay, and the grief. So these are all these roots, these issues, and I will get deeper into these issues. Okay, later on I will, on different ways and angles, I will explain more about it. Okay, and of course there is anger. Now we stopped yesterday with the anger. Anger is a warning sign of injustice. Okay, So I already said yesterday, it can be a real injustice or a perceived injustice. Okay. Now, I've been working in many different countries, and when you come in another country, they have a different culture. And so it's very easy to make mistakes, cultural mistakes. Okay? There are all kinds of things that are culturally acceptable or culturally the way you do. And if you're not aware, you know, you easily do wrong. Now, that's or people do things to you that you find very strange and can make you angry. And you're, why are they doing that? For example, one of the most common ones is when it comes to time consciousness. Okay, I had a Nigerian friend one time, and he was helping another friend who was in Switzerland and was getting married. And so he was to help to plan the wedding. And so this Nigerian friend of mine, he said, these people are crazy in Switzerland. He said, they are ridiculous. They are planning the wedding to the second. Like, you have so many seconds, you have so many seconds. He said, are they out of their mind? You see, if you ask a Swiss person, what time is it? He will tell you, for example, it is 6:54. He will tell you to the minute precise, because that's how Swiss culture is. If you are 1 minute late over time, you are late, and they will tell you you are late because you come in 2 minutes later. If you ask a Dutch person from my country, what is the time? They will always tell you the time with with 5 minutes precision. Okay, like, okay, it's 3:05, it's 3:10, 3:15, you know, with 5 minutes precision. Because in my country, as long as you arrive to a meeting no more than 5 minutes late, you're still on time. Okay. In Nigeria, when I ask you the time, what do people say? What is the typical way in Nigeria to tell the time?
Just tell you past 5, past 2,
Aha!
4.
It's either past 2 or it is 2:03. Which means it's with half an hour precision. Yes?
Yeah.
Aha.
Yeah.
Now, so this is a cultural difference. Now, if you would go, for example, now to Switzerland, and you are not aware of the Swiss culture, and you come 3:20 at somebody's house with whom you have an agreement to meet 3 o'clock, you think, well, I'm nice on time, no problem. And that Swiss person might be angry with you and say, how disrespectful, why you are coming late? And you are shocked, like, what's happening? You understand? Now, that person might be angry with you, but is that anger a righteous anger? Is that anger due to injustice?
Perceived.
It's a perceived injustice. Okay? So a perceived injustice just asks you to change your mindset, to get understanding, and then you can let go of it. But that is different than when it comes to a real injustice. Okay? When somebody, for example, an adult touches a child, or a man touches a woman in a sexual inappropriate way, that is a serious, real injustice. Okay? That brings anger. Now, the issue with anger is like when you another way to think of anger, or to have a picture, you know, to remember it with. If you drive your car and the engine oil in the engine gets too low, what happens? If at least the wiring of the car is, but if the wiring of the car is properly connected, what do you see on your dashboard?
A sign of
Yes,
empty, as in a sign.
a red warning light comes on. Okay.
Yes.
So now that means that warning light is anger. Okay. It is giving you a
Mm.
signal that something is wrong in the engine of your life. Okay. So now if you have
Mm.
a hammer in your car and you smash the light on your dashboard and say, the light is off, problem resolved. You see no light anymore, no warning, everything is fine, and you move on. What happens?
Hmm.
Your engine
Whatever
knocks.
you get, the engine knows. Yeah.
Yes, well, that's the same with our life. And this is the problem what most people do. They are angry and they say, okay, I will swallow it. We stuff down the anger, we don't want to feel it. Inside, we are still angry, we pretend we are not. We have smashed the warning light with the hammer and say, problem is resolved, but nothing is resolved.
Mm.
Okay? And so the anger starts piling up in our life. The next time something happens similar than the other issue that was not resolved, you feel the anger of the new issue, but the anger of the old issue adds up to it. And so
Mm.
you become double angry. What do
Mm.
you think that happens over the years? If
Accumulated
continually
anger.
injustices,
Mm.
yes. And then the people are saying, oh, you have a big anger issue. Something must be very wrong with you. The problem is many injustices have built up. Now, those injustices change our behavior. And the way our behavior changes actually triggers more anger in other people as well. So you start
Mm.
receiving more anger as well from other people as a result. So this is a cycle that goes faster and faster down over time.
Mm.
And then you are wondering in the end, why am I so angry? Why do I have all these problems? Okay. And then if you get into any kind of addiction, you don't know how to get out of it.
Mm.
How do you stop the addiction? How do you change these cycles? It is to start dealing with issue after issue of the very issues that make you angry, the very issues that you have been abused, that you experienced hurt and pain. And just learn to resolve them and start resolving them the one after the other.
Mm.
Okay. And then in the end, you will see that just suddenly everything starts dissolving and things will change in your life. And this is the issue of most people who struggle with any kind of addiction. Okay. So anger
Mm.
is also a
Yeah.
very serious issue. And then I said already, in Europe, Western cultures like in Europe and US are mainly built on guilt. From guilt, from wrongs, even generations ago. And some politicians use this. They play into this guilt to gain power and to push people down continually. They never resolve the problems. No, they want to continually play the guilt trip. Okay. But guilt is it really kills people over time. So now also with guilt, there is real guilt and false guilt. So whenever you feel guilty, you always have to ask yourself, is this a real guilt or is it a false guilt? Now, for example, if you have a driving license, okay, and I have a car and my car is in order, everything is working well, and I ask you, oh, please, my brother, can you quickly go to the city center and buy a few things for me? And you go to the city center and you get an accident with the car. Am I guilty?
No.
But the funny thing is, I might feel guilty because I asked you to go. But I am not
Mm.
guilty. So there are situations sometimes when we feel guilty, but actually we are not guilty. Now, of course, if the brakes of the car were not working well and I didn't tell you, or anyways, even if I would tell you, I shouldn't ask you to drive my car if the brakes are not in order. Okay? And if due to that problem you get an accident, then I am guilty. Okay? So it's very important always to distinguish with everything. When you feel guilty, ask yourself, am I really guilty? Yes or no? Now, one thing that is a big issue in most people their lives is when it comes to feeling forgiven when we have sinned, when we have done wrong. Have you experienced that maybe you know you did something wrong and you ask the Lord for forgiveness and later you still feel guilty?
Yeah.
Yes, you know, most people experience that problem. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, what did Jesus say? If you ask the Lord for forgiveness, what will the Lord do?
He will forgive you.
Yes, and in what way will he forgive? He will put that sin away as far as the east is from the west
He's from
and
the west.
remember it no more.
No more.
You see, we cannot do that. We cannot decide to forget something. We just don't have the ability, and we shouldn't. I will later in the end, when I hopefully have time to speak about forgiveness. Otherwise, maybe in the upper week I will do. Um, you know, uh, we cannot forget, but God can decide to remove something from his memory because he doesn't need to learn anything from what happened because he's already perfect. So he doesn't need to learn anything. So he can safely remove things from his memory. And that is what he does with our sin. Isn't that amazing? So
Oh.
how come we, after confessing a sin, after repenting of it, why do we sometimes still feel guilty? Do you, do you have an idea why?
Uh, I guess it's probably because it's sometimes we don't come to terms with the fact that God has actually forgiven us, or probably we think what we did, probably whatever it is we did is too much to be forgiven, or then, or sometimes we feel like um to berate ourselves for like think that we shouldn't have done that. And I think sometimes it could be pride, like
Mhm.
um thinking like, I'm too much to have done this, and then you see you feeling guilty, like I know I shouldn't have done it, like self pride, I guess.
Yes. Yes. Well, this is surely one of the issues when we have ungodly beliefs. You know, when we do not really believe God on his word.
Yeah.
Because often in the world system works very differently. So we sometimes have a difficulty really believing God on his word. So then it is ungodly beliefs that are operating in our life. Now, there are two other things that can be the issue. God also has said that he wants us to walk in the light. Now, when I was living in immorality in my own life and struggling with that and really battling it, I was so ashamed of it that I I was too afraid to share with anyone. So I told people half truths and little bits of it because I was too ashamed to tell the full truth. So basically, I did not walk in the light as the Lord was asking me to walk in the light. And it was all the way till I went after many years to Canada to a conference that I felt I was so far away from home. Nobody knew me. And I was so desperate that I felt safe enough to tell the pastor when I went to the front at the altar call to tell the truth of what was going on in my life. And when he prayed for me, that is when I got an encounter with the Lord. So powerfully. It radically changed my life. So my issue was that I did not walk in the light before fully. And that is what the Lord was waiting for me to do. So we have to walk in the light. So when it comes to repentance, yes, sometimes I can go in my inner room and I can quietly repent before the Lord and ask for forgiveness, and he will wipe it away, and then it will be done, and it will be broken, and it will be gone. But especially and specifically when it is a repetitive sin is another word for addiction, okay? Then I have to walk in the light, and I have to go to a brother or a sister, depending what it is, and say, please, can you stand with me? Can you please help me and keep me accountable? I need your help. And you confess with that brother or sister as a witness. Okay? And you ask that brother or sister, after you share the truth and the true character and nature of the issue of your struggle, and you repent in the presence of that person before the Lord, and then you ask that person, please pray over me, pray with me, and keep me accountable in this coming season. You will see that then the power of that sin will easily get broken. Okay? Because the Lord wants us to walk in the light. Now, there is a third reason why it can be that when we don't feel forgiven. You see, when somebody does something wrong to you, you have to forgive that person. Now, in the forgiving the person, you also have to grieve what you lost due to what that person did to you. Okay, I will explain that when I speak more detailed
Sorry,
about
I
forgiveness.
didn't get that. Sorry.
Okay, when somebody does something wrong to you, do you know why it is painful? Because you lose something. Okay, I will explain that in detail when I speak about forgiveness. Okay, in the end. But you always lose somebody. When somebody steals your wallet, you lose money, but you also lose your sense of safety. You lose a lot of time to get everything that was in the wallet. Maybe there was a bank card in it. Maybe your driving license was in it. It takes you time and money to get all those things back. You lose a lot of time. Okay, so you lose a lot of things. Now, if you forgive that person, you also have to grieve the pain of what you lost. Now, if you do wrong yourself, like when I lived in immorality, it cost me far more than I was ready to pay. But I didn't count the cost before. So basically, I was hurting myself. I was stealing years of my own life in disobedience to the Lord. And I never could get those years back. That's one of the reasons I got quite late married. Okay. Now, so even though in that time that I was living in that, I was asking the Lord to forgive me, but I still would feel guilty. Why? Because I did not forgive myself. I asked the Lord to forgive me, but I did not forgive myself. And because I did not forgive myself, I still felt guilty. And that is where it helps when you confess your sin in the presence of someone else before the Lord. You never confess your sin to another person, okay? That is what they do in the Catholic Church often. They confess the sin to the pastor. No, when in the plumb line, this teaching, when we do have a time of confession in the end, it's not about you confessing your sin to me. You confess them to the Lord. I'm just a witness. So if the devil would ever dare to come to you and accuse you of that sin again, You can say, ho, wait a minute. I have a witness who witnessed that I confess this. And the person who is testifying of your, and as a witness of your confession, I will pray over you. And that will help you to also forgive yourself and release yourself from that guilt. Okay? Because otherwise the guilt is a root that triggers you, and Satan uses it to pull us into addictive behaviors. It makes you feel like drowning. It makes you feel you can never get up. You can never get away. Okay? Do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes,
we will
sir.
get,
Thank
we
you.
will get more, when I speak about forgiveness, we will get back to this place, okay? And speak more deeply about it. Guilt has a lot to do with pointing fingers. There are people who, I will get to that later, but when you want to resolve a conflict, some people first want to fight to accuse and determine who is guilty of the problem, okay? And some people, when they have determined who is guilty, they think now the problem is resolved. But the problem is when you only start looking for people who are guilty, nothing is resolved. You have only created a deeper problem, because now you have broken even more friendship, more trust, more relationship. Okay? So accusation of who is guilty of a problem is most times not helpful. Of course, if it is a repetitive problem, you have to look, hey, who is making a mistake? Who is not responsible? But accusing is never helpful. Okay? It only drives fear. Drives guilt into people. Okay? And ultimately leads to loneliness. Okay? So these are some of the roots of the addiction. Now we come to the next area, and that is when it comes to issues of abuse. Okay? And we're going to, I'm going to explain something about abuse and trauma. Now, you have heard that there's both words, abuse and trauma.
Yes.
Now, both are negative, destructive events that take place. Now, there is only one difference between abuse and trauma. Abuse is caused by a person. Okay? Trauma is caused by circumstances. So, for example, if there is an earthquake or a volcano burst out or a hurricane, actually, the country we live in the Philippines, we have all three. Since we came here almost a year ago, we already had 2 earthquakes. Okay, the hurricanes, thank God, they're not coming over Cebu Island, but they're passing a little bit more up north over Manila. They're very bad hurricanes there, and it's very destructive. And the Philippines has many volcanoes. A little bit over a year ago, a volcano relatively close to Manila was bursting out, and 100,000 people had to get evacuated. So those are, for people, are traumatic events, but it's not that there is any person responsible for them. Okay?
Wait, but sorry. Um, I used to be of the thought that trauma can also be an end result of abuse. Isn't that so?
Well, every abuse is traumatic. It causes trauma, yes. But if I just speak strict about trauma, for example,
Okay.
if you
Okay.
fall sick, you can get very sick, and if you are very sick, that can be traumatic. Or if somebody close to you is sick, or if your parents pass away, or a very good friend passes away, That is traumatic. That's a trauma, but there is not a guilty person. Okay, and you have to grieve every
Yeah.
trauma. But when you speak about abuse, it is somebody causing it actively. Okay,
Yeah.
so I just to get that clear. And so when it comes to trauma, you only need to grieve. When it comes to abuse, you need to grieve and forgive in order to be relieved from the pain. Okay, so in the
Yeah.
process how to deal with it, you have to look like, hey, is this trauma or is this abuse? Because with abuse, you have to forgive the person who caused it. And again, when I speak about forgiveness, I will get much more into detail about that. Okay, and the power and the importance of forgiveness and why to forgive and how how to forgive and what it means. Okay,
Okay.
so now here you see a mother screaming at her child. So how do you feel when you see this picture?
Mm. Uh, it's would I say saddening, like
Yeah,
to put it as
yeah, how do you
thinking
think
of
this
it,
child is? How do you think this child is feeling when you see him?
of course, hurt, dejected, and yeah,
Yes, he looks devastated.
yeah,
So this is a typical picture of abuse. And this is the kind of abuse happening a lot in many families all over the world. Okay?
mm,
You see how this girl is sitting. What does this show to you?
of course, she has been abused.
Yes. Because if she were not abused and she would be very sad because of a traumatic event, she would not go and sit alone. She would look for somebody to comfort her. But the fact that she is not even looking for anyone to comfort her, or she can't find anyone to comfort her, that shows that there is abuse going on. She doesn't trust, she doesn't feel safe with anyone. And that's why she is suffering alone. And these are the kind of moments in every child's life when these moments happen, that the enemy, that Satan uses this kind of moments in a child's life to attack that child, to implant lies, ungodly beliefs into that child that he uses later on to drag that child down when that child grows up. Okay? And so when it
Mm,
comes to resolving issues in your life, you have to look like, when were this kind of moments in my life and what did I come to believe? What happened after that? How did this come to pass? Okay? And when you resolve those things and ask the Lord to come into those situations, things will start changing. Okay?
mm,
So this is a nice artistic picture, about parents and their child, and what it means if parents love the child. But I come back to that afterwards, okay, a little bit later. But it's very important to realize that, I spoke here about what you call with a nice word, hereditary factors. So the things you inherit from your parents and from your environment, from your teachers in school. That I don't know, when you went to school, your primary school, what did teachers do when they were angry with a child, when a child was disobedient, or maybe when you were disobedient?
of course, they flogged.
Yes. Is that correct to flog a child?
um, uh, yes and no.
That's a good answer. That's a correct answer. You see, I noticed, in YWAM Jos, we have a school. We started a school there. And I noticed at one point that actually almost all of the teachers had a stick in the classroom behind the door. And they would flog children with it. And I became very angry with our teachers. And I broke those sticks. And I said, you never dare to flog any child again. You know why? most of the teachers, when they flog a child, it's not because of what the child did wrong. It's because of the anger and annoyance of the teacher. And so they unleash their own frustration on the child. That is abuse.
Yeah.
So the teachers then came and said, yeah, but these children are doing this bad and that bad. Look what he did. What punishment do I give? Now, in the first place, most situations, there are different punishments that are much more effective to correct a child than flogging. Okay? Flogging and beating actually is a very ineffective way to correct a child. Okay? So there are better ways, more effective. Then secondly, I said, okay, there are very severe issues you say that these children do, that you must flog them. I said, okay, you are not going to flog them. Only the principal can flog them. You see, if a teacher goes to the principal and complains about a disobedience a child did, that maybe that teacher is already frustrated since morning because of something from home. Okay, now the child is disobedient, the teacher is double frustrated, brings all the frustration from the whole week with her and unleashes on that child. I don't want that to happen because that's abuse. And it only makes the child more angry and more disobedient. So he said, now the teacher has to state to the principal what the child did, and then the principal in the office, not in the classroom, because then you shame even the child in front of the other children, said in the principal office that the principal then will give the child a spanking. You see, the principal will not have all the other emotions attached to it. So he will only give the punishment accordingly that what the child did. So I asked the teachers, I said, please, now we have to set rules. What are the disobediences that are worthy of a spanking of the child? Well, they took about half an hour at least to come up with, I think, 4 or 5 things only. You know, before they said all the naughty and the disobediences. In the end, they only could come with 4 or 5 issues that were worthy of the child deserving a spanking. I said, okay. I said, these issues are so severe. I said, beyond the flogging that the child will get from the principal, if a child receives a flogging from the principal, also that child will get a note to take home to give to the parents. The parents must sign it and the child must bring it back the next day, signed by the parents, stating that your child got a flogging, a beating, because of doing this and this wrong in the classroom. You know what the funny thing was? Barely ever did the principal need to flog a child. You understand? Teachers started realizing, there are better ways to do it. But in a few cases, he had to, and then the note would go home. Okay, so beating often is an abuse. Now, there was one other boy, and when his father was a military, because the Wyvern base there is just next to the military barracks, and so one military brought his children, and one of the children, he said, well, beat this one very well. He's very disobedient. Just beat him very well if he's disobedient. Because that's typically how military do. And this boy was in my wife's, by that time I wasn't married yet with her, but around that time I did get married with my wife, and she was a teacher, and this boy was in her class. This boy would bring my wife to tears of his disobedience. She didn't know how to handle him and what to do with him because he was very disobedient. And one day I passed by the school just towards the end of their break time, and this boy was fighting outside with the other boys and causing trouble. And so the teacher wanted to give him a beating. I said, no, nothing. I said, the break time is over. Everybody goes inside. He stays with me. And I sit down with this boy. I think at least 20 minutes, half an hour. I don't know. I didn't check on my watch. You know, I was in Nigeria. You have all the time. And I was just started talking with him, listening to him, asking him what is going on in your life, you know, like, and just listening to him and show real interest in what is going on in his life. This boy was maybe 8, 9 years old. And the more he felt comfortable as I was listening to him and asking him questions and being interested in what is going on in his life, he started sharing more and more and more. And by the time I sent him back to the classroom, of course, I didn't give him any beating. You know, he was ready to just say sorry for the trouble he caused. But he was so happy because, you see, a lot of children don't get any attention. And bad, negative attention, even attention of a beating, is better for many children than no attention at all. All this boy
Yeah.
was asking for was attention. And that's what I gave him. I gave him attention. And since if that boy walked from the school home, he passed by the place we lived. You know, the school was on the new land of Y1, like the land we bought by that time. But we also had a local government party secretariat that we were using. So he passed by there to get home. And since that time, very often when he would walk home and pass by the other building, he would quickly run inside the building, run into our room, and quickly say, Uncle Ansel, how are you doing? You know, and he would quickly come and share how things are going in school, what's going on, and then maybe 5, 10 minutes, and then he will go home. Because he would just be looking for some attention. In the class, he never gave trouble again. And years later, his father wrote me, he said, Ansel, you know, my son that caused so much trouble in the past, now he's finishing his university. The boy didn't have any problem again. You see, but they were beating him, not understanding the real problem this boy had. It was just he needed somebody to listen to him. And so there are so often that when we don't take time to look what is going on in someone's life, we misdiagnose what is going on, and we become abusive to one another. Okay? Now, when it comes to growing up, because this is where this, you know, this story also, this what happened, is a good illustration of. When you grow up, it is basically from the moment of conception till adulthood, when you are expected to be matured. Okay, it's like a road. Okay. Now here you see a beautiful, this is a Dutch highway in my country. If your road of your life is this beautiful, straightforward, no potholes, no obstacles, you know, will you easily go from all the way from birth to maturity? Do you think you will expect much problems on your road growing up?
No.
No. How many people have their life growing up like this? Nobody. Okay? No one of us. No one's life looks like this. This is only how we make our roads look like in Europe. Okay? Our highways. Very beautiful, smooth, fast. Okay? You see, beside the nice lines, do you see just to the right of the sideline? Do you see those little ripples in the tar? They put those purposely in. If you by mistake, maybe you fall asleep in the car and you start going off the road, the moment your wheels go over it, it goes, you know, you feel the shaking in the car, and then you quickly wake up, wake up and you get back. So it's a nice warning lines. It's very well safe, you know, well made. But that is not how our lives look up growing up. For no one. For many of us, this is more how it looks like. Okay?
This screams Nigeria.
Yes, I know. Even though this picture is not in Nigeria. So there are other countries where there are sometimes problems as well. Okay, but this is typically Nigerian road. There are potholes. Parts of the tire
Yeah.
are missing. Okay. Now, when this is basically the picture of passive abuse, because there are two types of abuse, active abuse and passive abuse. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, passive abuse is when the good things that you need are not given. Now, I will give you a very practical example. When I was in the base in Jos, in Nigeria, there were often children in the village, and you will see them limping because they have pain in their feet, and they walk barefoot. Now, I quickly got to understand what often was going on. So I would, when I see a child limping, I go to him, and often what you see is they have this thick callus in the bottom of their feet because they are not wearing slippers. And in dry season, you know, it gets very dry, and the callus on the bottom of the foot is just getting thicker and thicker. And then because the child has no slippers, he would step in a piece of glass or a piece of sharp metal, and it will cut the foot. But since the callus is so thick and not flexible, every step will open that wound, and the wound will never close. And then will get infected, and it becomes very painful. And parents won't even notice. Now, it doesn't mean there is no money in the house, because many times these were the children whose father was alcoholic. The father has enough money to go and buy his alcohol, but he doesn't take the money to go and buy slippers for his son or for his daughter. And then they will not give the attention to see that their child has a medical problem. So no attention is given. No slippers were given. But those were the things the child needed. So the thing the child needed is not given. That is passive abuse. Okay? Now, what I would most times do, I would take that child to my room, to the base. I had these razor blades. You buy them in Nigeria everywhere easily. And I would start cutting away the callus from the bottom of the foot. Make it gradually thinner and thinner till it is all the way thin. Now you can see properly the wound. Then I would clean the wound, and I put a bandage. And I will tell the child, please come back tomorrow, because tomorrow I will have to clean it again and put a new bandage till it is healed. Now, in most of the cases, when the child will go home with a bandage around his foot, now the parents will observe, because they will feel ashamed that, oh, somebody else observed that my child had a wound on his foot and I didn't even observe. So most cases, the next day, the parents would have already cleaned the bandage and put a new bandage. And I would say, okay, now I have their attention. Okay. But that's passive abuse. Now, there are many forms of passive abuse. Okay. It's everything that you need to grow up, matured, and healthy. I will come to detail of it. Okay. In every area. The other aspect of abuse can be when there is a blockage on the road. This is active abuse. Something is actively blocking the road. You cannot pass. Okay? So that's the picture of active abuse. And of course, you see here a picture in the snow. Snow makes the road very slippery. So ultimately, the obstacles and the troubles and the problems in your road of growing up can become so much that you get stuck and you can't move forward or backward anymore, and you become stagnant. Now, this has very severe consequences for every child. Any child that gets stuck at a certain point and doesn't know how to move forward becomes basically physically in the body an adult, but in behavior and way of thinking is still immature. Okay, I will explain to you also in the end, specifically when it comes to any youth growing up in a home where there is an addict or an alcoholic in the home. Okay, when the father or the mother or brother or sister is an addict or an alcoholic, there are very specific issues that come as a consequence in the children's lives then. Okay, but basically what happens, you come in this kind of state where there is either so many potholes in the road or so many trees or issues that blockages on the road, there is no way you can grow matured. But your body will grow matured, but spiritually and emotionally you will not, which causes all its own problems. Now, when this happens to many people in a whole culture or a whole people group can crash. Okay, I vividly remember when I was in 2002, I was in South Africa, and that was at the height of the HIV/AIDS pandemic well, mainly throughout Africa. I mean, throughout the world there was a lot of AIDS, but in South Africa it was really a pandemic in very, very severe ways, worse than I think any other country in the world. South Africa was hit worst by it. And so there were ministries that were trying to help the children, because basically what happened in South Africa, particularly among the colored and black communities, is that the whole middle generation got wiped out for a big part. So you had so many grandmothers whose husbands often even had passed away, but you had these old grandmothers, their children would have died of HIV/AIDS, but they already had grandchildren, and these old grandmothers would take care of the grandchildren. But they didn't have the strength and the capacity anymore. And they were also gradually passing away because of old age. And so these children had really a struggle to grow matured. And the consequence of that you see today still in South Africa, that vast amounts of these generations that grew up like that are very heavy into addictions, very heavy into drug addiction and alcoholism, because their parents were not there. And as a culture, as a whole group, they have crashed to a place of where they don't know how to grow matured. And that takes a lot of time and sometimes generations to get them out of it, to get that unstuck and get them back to a healthy place. And basically it takes a revival. It takes the Lord coming in, and it takes the Christian. As Christians, we are the only ones who actually have the real solution. If we take the love of the Lord for these people serious. Okay, so as you see, when this kind of accidents happen on the roads, especially in Europe, you see fire brigades pull out, ambulances come, like trauma helicopters come, and they will massively start putting to work to save lives and to clear the roads. But when a culture crashes as a whole people group, often you barely see anyone caring about them. In South Africa, you don't see anyone really caring about it. There are a few missions that do a little bit, as much as they can do. But it's like if you see this kind of accident and there is only one man from a fire brigade, maybe with one piece of tool coming to try to resolve the problem. He can't. It's impossible. Okay? And so that is the kind of situation when a whole culture crashes. But it also happens to individuals. Okay? And you need help to get unstuck. You cannot, out of this situation, you cannot get out of it by yourself alone. And by the time you will do ministry, hopefully, you will realize you will meet people who are stuck. And please realize, don't start blaming them, but start looking what caused them to get stuck. What are the potholes in their life? What are the obstacles in their life? And help them to clear the road and get unstuck. That is ministry. Okay? So I think we have been going for an hour. Shall we take a little break?
Okay.